Mr. Rogers here. Today we're going to work with identifying and drawing points, lines, line segments, rays, and angles, and be able to identify these in a familiar figure. Okay, so before I begin, I want to go over the standard that I'm using for this video. I am using standard 4.G.1, which is I can draw points, lines, line segments, angles, right, acute, obtuse, and perpendicular and parallel lines, and being able to identify these in two-dimensional figures. Also in this video, I am referencing Eureka Math for Module 4, Lesson 1. Alright, so let's go over some terms that you're going to need to be able to know and some terms that I'm going to be going over in this video. So today we are going to learn about points, lines, line segments, rays, and angles. So let's get to it. Okay, so if I was to draw two dots on my board right here, all right? So if you notice, or you can notice, that these two dots represent a specific location on my board, okay? I am going to call these dots points because a point represents a location, okay? I can also label these points with letters. So I'm going to label these 2 points A and B. You can label these points whatever letters that you want. I just like to personally start at the beginning of the alphabet when I get to be able to label points. But you do what you want to do and do it the way that you feel more comfortable. Okay? So I can connect these 2 points that I just made. And when you look at these 2 points, when they have been connected, you notice that these aren't just 2 points now, okay? I would call this a line segment, okay? A line segment is where it shares 2 endpoints. So this line segment has endpoint A and endpoint B, okay? So up here, I'm going to write what I've had so far. I started with points A and B. Now I have a line segment AB, okay? And how you label a line segment is you have your 2 letters that you have or your 2 points that you used, and you just put a line above AB. So to label a line segment, it's just your 2 points and then your line that goes above them. All right? I can draw another point on my board and label it point C. Okay, and I can connect it to A like I did with AB. So now it's a line segment AC. But what if I want to extend this line segment to make it longer? Okay, the way I do that is if I want to extend it, I'm going to extend it in both directions. So all I did was I put an arrow off of point A, an arrow off of point C. Now I have something that is known as a line, okay? So a line, if you can see in this figure, it extends in both directions, okay? And the way I label this, I have my 2 points that I used, AC, and I'm going to draw a line with 2 arrows above AC. So it's just a line with an arrow on each end to represent that this is a line, which means it's extending in both directions. All right, so far I have points A, B, okay? Now I connected point A and B together to make a line segment that has 2 endpoints that they share, okay? Then I made a point C and connected it to point A and made a line which extends in both directions. Now I'm going to draw another point and label it point D. All right? And I can extend or I can connect it to point B. Okay. Now, what if I want to extend it in only one direction? Well, I can do that. So I'm going to extend it off of point D. If you notice, the line AC is very similar to this, what I just created. Okay. What I just created is known as a ray. Okay. So an array is very similar to a line. The only difference, like you can see, is the array is only extended in one direction. Okay, so array only extends in one direction, whereas a line extends in both directions. Okay, and how you label an array is you have your points. So I'm going to put BD. I'm going to have a line with only one arrow, showing you that it's only extending in one area or in one direction. Okay, and I can also make another point. I'm going to label this E. I'm going to connect it to point B like I just did. Okay, now I also want to make an array or make a ray with BE. So I'm going to extend it in one direction. Now if you notice, I am just like BD right here, so I have another ray. So I'm going to put BE with my ray symbol, a line, and an arrow in one direction because it's only extending in one direction. Now if you notice right here, my two rays, BD and BE, share the same endpoint B. So they share the same point in the middle. When two rays share the same endpoint, they make an angle. So how you make an angle in a figure is just like a little line in the middle. Okay? So now let's go over how we label an angle. All right? So an angle, how you draw like the little angle symbol, I like to think of like the less than symbol, the less than symbol, and then I am going to do my letters. How you put your letters in with your angle is so the endpoint that they share is always going to be in the middle. So you can choose to start at E or D. Okay? Either way is fine. I'm going to start with D first, so I'm going to go D, B, E, or you can say this as angle E, B, D. Whichever way you want to do, both ways are correct. Just whichever way you feel more comfortable. You can start on one side or the other. All right, so if I look back at my figure, I have gone over all the terms, but let's review the terms one more time. So I started with 2 points, A and B. Remember, a point is just representing a location. If you're doing it on a whiteboard, if you're doing it on paper, wherever you're drawing this points at, a point is just representing a location. Okay? Then I went into drawing a line segment connecting points A and B, and a line segment just has 2 endpoints. Okay? Then I went into drawing point C, connecting it with A and extending it in both directions to make a line. So I have line AC, which means that my line extends in both directions. Then I made 2 arrays, BD and BE. An array is just extending in one direction. Again, rays are very similar to lines. The only difference is a ray only extends in one direction, whereas a line extends in both directions. Then I made an angle. And an angle is formed when 2 rays share the same endpoint. So my 2 rays, BD and BE, share the endpoint B. So that is how I was able to make an angle. All right? So this was the first half of the standard, being able to draw points, lines, line segments, rays, and angles. Now let's look at the second part of the standard, being able to identify these specific things in a familiar figure. So I'm going to erase my board. Okay, so now I'm just going to draw a rectangle. Okay, I'm just going to draw a standard rectangle. I'm going to label everything. Okay, so all I did was I just drew a rectangle and I put A, B, C, and D, labeling it. Okay, so if I look at this figure right here, I can see that there are 4 points, I see that there are 4 line segments. And I see that there are 4 angles. Okay? So, you might be wondering how in this figure that there are rays to make the angles, because you don't see any rays in here. Well, remember, an angle is created when 2 rays share the same endpoint. So let's go over how I see that there are angles in this figure. So if I look right here, I'm going to use a different color marker so you can understand what I see. If I look at line segment AD and AB, all right? So if I extend AD, the line segment AD in one direction, and I extend the line segment AB in one direction, both of those rays share the endpoint A, and they make an angle. Okay? Let's look at another angle that I see in here. If I look at line segment AB and line segment BC, if I extend A out in one direction and I extend BC in another direction, the rays AB and ray BC share the same endpoint B, and they make an angle. Okay, let's look at another ray that I see. Okay, so if I look right here, if I look at line segment BC and line segment CD, if I extend in one direction, so I extend my line segment in one direction to point B, and then extend in this direction with line segment CD, I see that my 2 rays BC and CD share the common endpoint of C, and then they make an angle. Okay? Then the last angle I see, that's a B, is if I look at line segment CD and DA, if I extend those out, so I extend line segment CD out to point C, and line segment DA, and I extend it out to point A, they share the endpoint D, and then they make an angle. All right, so how I got these rays to make these angles was by realizing that an angle is formed when 2 rays share the same endpoint, okay? So in this case, you don't see the rays being you don't see them automatically. You have to use your knowledge of your terminology and being able to visualize this. So in this case, I was able to use my terminology of knowing how an angle is formed and how to determine a ray in a figure, even when it's not presented clearly to me. I had to use my imagination a little to be able to notice this. So now let's go into labeling my different points, line segments, and angles in this case. So if I look right here, if I go to labeling my points, obviously the points that I see is A, B, C, and D. Okay? Because in the beginning of the video, I told you that you can label points using letters out of the alphabet. Like I said, I also said I like to start at the beginning of the alphabet, so that's why I came up with these points. Okay? Let's look at my line segments. Let's label my line segments. Okay, so if you look right here, if you remember what a line segment is, a line segment is just where it has 2 endpoints. So if I look right here, I see A and B. Okay, those are my 2 points that they have in this. So I have 2 endpoints of A and B. So I'm going to draw AB. And remember, you represent a line segment with just a line above it. Okay, then if I look right here, I see BC. So that's one of my line segments I see. Then I see CD. That was another one because they have 2 endpoints. Then the last line segment I see is DA. Okay? So again, a line segment just has the 2 endpoints. So the way I got these line segments was taking my 2 points And then that's my line segment. Okay, let's look at the angles. Okay, so let's label our angles that I see in this picture. Okay, I've done explained how you get angles out of this, being able to take two rays and they share that same endpoint. Let's figure out the angles now. Okay, so if I look at A right here, A was the endpoint that was being shared between DA, line segment DA, ray DA, and ray AB. So my angle right here, again, remember when they share the endpoint, that's in the middle. So I'm going to start with D right here. One of my angles was DAB. Okay, that was one of them. Then the next angle that we looked at was rays AB and BC. So ray AB and ray BC share the same endpoint of B. Okay, so B is going to be in the middle. So this angle is ABC. Okay, then the next one we looked at was rays BC and ray CD. And these right here share the endpoint C. Okay, so this angle is BCD. Okay, then the last angle we looked at was dealing with the rays CD and ray DA. And this angle was having the common endpoint of D. So I'm going to put CDA. Okay, so that is how I got the angles. All right, so in this video, I was able to identify and draw points, lines, line segments, rays, and angles, and I was able to, with a figure, be able to pull out each of those. So I completed the standard today. I hope this video helped you guys. Until next time.